Hello, everyone. Welcome to the summit. I'm Sylvie Rocab, and I'm here with Trudy Goodman. And I'm going to start with reading her bio. Trudy Goodman, PhD, is the founding teacher of Insight LA and co-founder of the Institute of Meditation and Psychotherapy. She has taught at universities and retreat centers worldwide for over 40 years. Trudy has trained in mindfulness and Zen since 1973 and is one of the senior Buddhist teachers in the US. At Insight LA, Trudy has trained a new generation of teachers who make mindfulness and meditation classes available for professional caregivers, social justice, and environmental activists, first responders, teachers, and unsung individuals working on the front lines of suffering. Trudy is a contributing author of the Clinical Handbook of Mindfulness, Compassion, and Wisdom in Psychotherapy and Mindfulness. She's widely known for her role as the voice of Trudy, the Love Barbarian, in the Netflix series Midnight Gospel. The beauty of living in LA. Welcome, Trudy.
Thank you.
So
I
good
think
to have you.
that's definitely the favorite thing of all that bio stuff.
So, Trudy, I'd like to start with the Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh. He came up with the expression interbeing, which is this beautiful sense of we are connected with everyone, people, and the natural world. And when it comes to the lifestyles that we're living in the digital world and having crazy busy lifestyles in the modern world, one wonders what can you how can mindfulness really help with the sense that so many people feel of being isolated and disconnected?
Okay, it's a really important question because mindfulness really means being connected to the present moment, to the experience that you and I, each one of us, is having of the present moment by moment, ongoingly in this, stream of experience that we call our life. And that quality of bringing attention to the everydayness, to the things that we ordinarily might very well ignore, bringing attention to what's happening simply because it's here, it's happening, whether it's a thought, a feeling, whatever kind of experience. That act of bringing attention is an act, I feel, of really treasuring life, our life in the form of you, life in the form of me. And it brings the willingness to do that. And the training in mindfulness is to bring our attention back over and over again, just beginning anew, to be with our experience as it's happening, to just really, as Ram Dass used to say, be here now. And the way that helps connect us to each other, I feel is sort of axiomatic. We can't be connected to other people if we're not connected to ourselves.
Right.
So by connecting to ourselves, we also connect to our awareness of others, and not just in the human world, but in the natural world as well. The awareness of the sky, of the ground, of the elements, of the creatures and plants and trees and everything around us. So I feel I turn often to the words of Mary Oliver, a poet who I feel writes at the intersection of mindfulness and love of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary Oliver talks about how she goes out on these walks through nature every day. I mean, she's passed away now, but she used to go out every day where she lived on Cape Cod. And she said, I wouldn't be looking for a poem. I wasn't looking for something to happen. All I was doing was just going out to notice things, to notice everything, to notice anything. And she talks about going out for a more serious reason than, looking for something specific or subject matter for a poem. And what is that serious reason? It's for the pleasure of looking itself. She's looking because of the pleasure of um, of just seeing the world around her from this more calm, quiet place of being willing to be attentive. And I think that's what you were talking about, Sylvia. We're so busy and distracted, and everything encourages us to multitask and get even busier. And to really feel connected to each other and to our world, I think we have to slow into our experience and check in with our intuition and our sense of being in a body and opening our senses so that the body is like more sensitive and awake and alive, just feeling the aliveness of this body, this being. And then we begin to sense more and more, oh, your aliveness and my aliveness, we're sharing this life. We're sharing this aliveness.
Yes.
There's a sense of more and more that people are just like me, that they suffer just like me, that they grieve just like me, that they get scared just like me, that they get sick just like me. It's a beautiful practice to begin to sense, along with our own uniqueness, the ways in which we share a common humanity.
Right.
Yeah, and I think mindfulness helps us be less preoccupied with ourselves, frankly,
Right.
because it's a barrier to feeling connected to to everything else.
Totally, especially in this culture where it's so individualistic, right? It's like so focused on the me, you
Yeah,
know. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And on that topic, you have shared, and I'm a witness, that you consider yourself to be a connector of people, of communities, of cultures, of spiritual traditions, and that mindfulness is one way that you have really aimed to cross all kinds of divides. So I'd like to ask you, can you share with us, like, what are the ways that are really effective to crossing those divides? And how do you help people do that, even in situations where sometimes it tends to be really difficult?
Yeah, it is sometimes. One of the things we've discovered over the past 50 years, and I realized I actually have been teaching this is 2024. And I actually started teaching 48 years ago. I realized
Oh,
first teacher, the one who actually made me a Dharma teacher, the Korean Zen teacher, the Venerable Sungsan Sansanim, he actually made us give little Dharma talks right from maybe after you've been practicing a couple of years, 2, 3 years, to share your experience. So I'm just remembering that. But over these decades, we've really discovered that being present with anything enhances that activity. I mean, think about kissing somebody when your mind is thinking maybe about, I don't know, somebody else you wish you were
yes.
kissing. There's so many activities. You think of, eating something delicious and savoring and tasting what it is. Mindfulness has been found to enhance, pretty much, I would say, across so many sectors and so many walks of life. It's really giving us a glimpse into our own unfolding nature. And so I have always felt that mindfulness was a bridge. For example, I was a psychotherapist, after I think I started meditating first, but anyway, I became a psychotherapist. And I really saw how so many of my colleagues actually didn't even know how to sustain their attention to the people in front of them.
Mm.
how to sit with somebody and really deeply listen and be receptive and awake. So I saw, okay, let's make a bridge between, so I was one of the first to begin to teach mindfulness and loving kindness and compassion practices to psychotherapists. And then with other colleagues, we started an institute and we wrote the first book on mindfulness and psychotherapy. And this is just to say, whatever you listeners, whatever you love and are interested in, you can bring mindfulness to that in your own way. And I also feel like, Sylvia, I've been interested in the work, particularly of women who are bridging science and the humanities through their work. I'm interested, one of the things that meditation does, and you know this from your own experience, is it strengthens your intuition. I am interested in people who have brought their intuitive selves into realms that they've also studied scientifically. People like, you are probably aware of the work of Suzanne Simard, and who talk about the ecology of forests and how forests behave in many ways like our families and our communities, nurturing each other, supporting each other, connected by, this underground invisible network, and has done impeccable science, but has also listened to the trees.
Yes.
Or the work of Monica Gaglione, who wrote Thus Spake the Plant, and has done this pioneering work on plant communication and cognition, has worked with plant shamans, indigenous elders, mystics, to help us see that plants, they're not that different from people. They have subjectivity, they have their cognition, they have memory, they have a perspective. Apparently, they even have their voices, which, I feel like these are women who have crossed the divide between science and intuitive knowing, maybe more, what would we call it? Maybe more mystical knowing, but knowing that is beyond data and technology, but science as a really deep, deep human inquiry. So I feel like this connecting of different traditions, I've always been very interested in what are the teachings that are a thread through all the traditions of Buddhism, for example. So I think it's always about finding common ground and having the openness of mind and heart to recognize work that connects us to maybe times and places that are quite different from our own. I just feel like we've really lost in the modern world a lot of our connection to the mystical, to the sacred, to the intuitive knowing that is our birthright, that each one of us have access to.
Yeah. You know what I find to be so inspiring and exciting, Trudy, on that theme is the fact that, I mean, when you think of like practices like Buddhism and even like indigenous practices, they're getting the spotlight. It's like all of a sudden, what used to be a very closed scientific mindset, now science is actually proving empirically what wisdom traditions have been saying all along, the
Right.
relational, the connection. So it's, I don't know about you, but I find getting super inspired that it's like getting an indigenous people person to even talk at a conference is like you have to wait a few months because there's so everybody wants like their wisdom. And it's the same idea with like Buddhist teachers. And there's a hunger, I think, for the wisdom to be kind of like expressed. I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about compassion in this conversation. I mean, you're talking about Suzanne Simard and how she was able to find out that trees actually seem to have a sense of compassion, sending nutrients via the interconnection with the fungi, right, to other trees that might be suffering. I mean, That was incredible scientific discovery. What would you say is like the role of compassion in trying to heal those wounds of isolation, disconnection, and division that we have in our culture?
Well, in the Buddhist tradition, compassion and love are really seen as just two sides of the same thing.
Mhm.
Compassion is the wish for another being, a human being, a creature, a plant being, for any other being to be free from suffering. And that wish springs from that sense of interconnectedness that allows us to really um, treasure each other and to treasure this world and to talk about that now, in a time of so much warfare and bloodshed and it might seem kind of odd, but I feel like this is the only actually hope we have, yes, of discovering really in our own experience how and the peace that we feel in the presence of nature is such an ally in this. But how we can discover through the study of ecology, through the study of meditation, that everything is interdependent, interconnected, as you said. Um, compassion exists because we exist, right? And if you look at young children, little ones, they have natural compassion. When somebody cries, when somebody's unhappy, they'll often they'll point a grown up if they're nonverbal to help. I, Passion, it's innate, it's wired into us, and it might get conditioned out of us. But again, I think that love, compassion, joy, peace, these are inherent, these are innate to us, and they might get covered over. But that's where the work of mindfulness, of meditation, of other contemplative traditions and practices um, help us to uncover what really is our true nature. And compassion exists, joy exists, love exists because nature exists, right? That's how we can experience the wholeness of life. Um, yeah, I just think that compassion, like I said, is another face of love, that when love meets suffering, it turns into compassion.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Trudy, I want to ask you to help me break a stereotype. For so many years, like there's been the stereotype that meditation is like gazing, really. The sense that you turn inward and there isn't really that much caring for the world. And I feel that in your work, you have shown that that's not this stereotype is not really reality. And I'm just like remembering years ago when I first started attending your Sunday sitting group at Insight LA here in Santa Monica, Southern California. And you very bluntly said, and which I really appreciated, you looked at the room and you said something like, this room looks really white, and we need to change that. We need to bring more people of color. I'm just curious, do you remember that?
I remember that. I remember years and years of trying to facilitate that.
Yeah.
It's complicated when you have an organization that is founded by a white woman, me, trying to retrofit to really bring in and include BIPOC folks, AAPI folks, in um, important roles in the community. But
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
saying that, and I remember, spearheading a lot of work to try and make that a reality, especially to have more teachers of color.
Exactly. And sorry to interrupt, but the continuation of that was, first of all, you named it at a time that, at least in my experience, I wasn't seeing very many. I mean, I wasn't seeing any other really Buddhist or spiritual groups that were actually talking about inclusivity in terms of race. And at the same time, like you said, you were spearheading these projects where you were teaching teachers or training teachers to go and bring mindfulness to all kinds of communities that were dealing with social justice and environmental justice, and like in the front lines of suffering, as you like to say it. So, I mean, I was really appreciating that you were doing that at a time, and it felt very pioneering. What I'm curious about is like, from your perspective and your experience, how is it, can you explain to us, how is it that our own personal healing is so deeply tied to the healing of our community, our communities, and our social systems, and even, all of the beings, even in the natural world?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it comes right back to what you brought up at the beginning, Sylvie, about our interconnectedness. And I mean, even you look at something like race, it's a construct, it's not real. However, the consequences of racialized everything in our society are very real.
Yeah.
And so I think understanding uh, sort of both sides, the sameness of that life is one, where it's one thing, but also the differences that need to be respected. Um, that we can't just mush everybody together in a lump and say how lovely we're all interbeing. Um, that that interbeing needs to also be made up of tremendous respect for the differences, the uniquenesses, the different identities. Um, and I think that's one of the mistakes that has traditionally been associated with meditation, that on the one hand, it's navel gazing. All you do is think about yourself and your own condition. Or on the other hand, it's denying our separateness and our differences just to say, all is empty, all is one. In fact, the art and the science, really, of mindfulness and meditation practice is being able to hold both, is being able to hold the oneness and the two-ness, as one of my teachers used to say. Being able to hold both, being able to hold it all, being able to hold our sense of maybe being alone and isolated and separate, with moments when we really know how deeply we are connected to each other, that we share this sky, this ground, this ocean, this earth. Um, you know, to be able to hold all of this in the same heart, to be
Yeah.
able to conflicting emotions in the same heart. Um, I don't know if you've ever been in an intimate relationship or lived in a family, you know how love and hate can come up very quickly next to each other.
Right.
I love you until you don't do what I really want you to do, and then I hate you. I'm laughing, but being able to accept all the differences and all the samenesses, this is our practice to learn how to do this. There's a beautiful stanza. I'm not going to read the whole poem, from this poem called A Wedding, by Boris Pasternak. And I like the metaphor of a wedding too, because we're talking about the marriage of different dimensions of our hearts and of our world. He says, into the enormous sky flew a whirlwind of blue-gray patches, a flock of doves spiraling up suddenly from the dovecotes. And to see them makes you wish, just as the wedding feast is ending, years of happiness for this couple flung into the wind like doves. Life, too, is only an instant. It's only a dissolving of ourselves into everyone, as if we gave ourselves as gifts. And I love this part of that poem, because if we do have self-compassion and we do treasure the innate gifts of love, of joy, of compassion, of peace in our hearts, then I feel we can feel ourselves worthy of giving ourselves as a gift to the world. That whoever you are, whoever I am, whoever all of our listeners and participants are, each one of us has some gift to give to the world, whether it's a smile or a skill, our love, whatever it is. And I feel that's something that is such a win-win, because in treasuring the possibilities, what's possible for the human heart embodied in each one of us, we get the confidence to be able to then feel we have something to contribute to the world.
Yeah, totally. And isn't there something like about like the more love we experience and express, the more we grow within our own loving? So it's kind of like, love and caring and connectedness. It's almost like it multiplies, right?
Yes.
The more you care, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very
Yeah.
abundant.
And that's a powerful teaching in the Buddhist tradition too, Sylvie, that as this wonderful monk of the last century, Nyapponika he said, and you've probably heard me say this in teaching, to that which we bring attention, to that does the heart incline. Whatever we pay attention to gets stronger. And
Yes.
that's important to be mindful about what we're really giving our attention to. And that's where it comes back to, I think, what Mary Oliver was saying. She said, everything is about, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, everything is about attentiveness, and I feel that kind of attention that she's talking about is a form of love, of appreciation, of reverence. In fact, she said, I go out looking for that more serious reason, for pleasure, for joy, for these are food for the soul, and I would be strong souled, the better to honor this world and my little voyage through it.
Mm.
So, yeah, we all have this little voyage through it.
Yes.
And we want to honor ourselves as a living, embodied part of this world, and the world that we're blessed to be part of in all of its misery and all of its glory, all of it.
One of the things that you've been doing for many years is to sit in meditation circles that you guide at the beach here in Santa Monica. And I wonder if you can describe for us, what is it like to have this sort of meditative intimacy with all of the beings of the ocean? And when I say beings, I usually like to use that word as beings can include the sky and the clouds and the crashing waves and the sand. And so the moist, like delicious, salty marine scent that comes from the winds, from the deep sea and the ocean. So if you could just kind of take us into that intimacy, what is it like to meditate at the beach?
Just did it, Sylvie. You just did it. You were just
I stole your answer.
the sand, the colors. I will add, we would usually gather before sunrise, and then the feeling of the warmth of the rising sun on your back, because you're facing the ocean, and it rises. Obviously the sun rises in the east, and the ocean here in California is to the west.
Right.
And also the waves. I feel like listening to the sound of the waves, that rhythmic sound of the waves, is like the pulse or the rhythm of life, the ebb and flow and the ongoingness of our breath, which we, breathes us as long as we're alive. So we connect with those rhythms of nature, dawn and the waves rolling in, and then that sort of hiss of the water as it pulls back, and then the next wave coming forward, and to sit quietly and be still and just bear witness to this great wilderness. It's the only wilderness that we have here in Los Angeles is the ocean. I mean, this huge city just stops at the edge of the ocean. And it's cold right now. I used to do it all year round, but now I don't. But you don't need to swim in it. You can sort of metaphorically swim in it by meditating near it. And I see people doing that when I walk on the beach, just sitting quietly and receiving the wisdom of these cycles, the ebb
Mm,
of nature.
totally.
Yeah.
If I may add, when it's not so cold, right? But there's certain days when it's a little cold, but not too cold. And then you go for a dip in the water, even if it's like for 5 seconds, there's like a magical level of huge energy that kind of like explodes in your body after you comes out. So I highly recommend it. It might not be meditational, but it's an incredible experience.
Anything is mindfulness if you're paying attention as you experience it.
Mm,
Meditation per se, we think of formal meditation as sitting quietly and not mixing the activity of being quiet and sitting quietly with any other activities,
yeah.
but some practices that help us stay present and open our hearts. So, sure, that's formal meditation. But anything that we're really completely immersed in can be meditative.
Yeah, even when it's like your heartbeat is going like, 100 miles an hour, you can still do it, huh? This is like really a great reminder.
Yeah, or people who paint or who write poetry or who, when they are immersed in their creativity, um, their sense of worry about themselves or passage of time even just melts away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we talked about this a little bit, but perhaps going a little bit deeper into the role of gratitude and just pure appreciation. How is it that can be really healing, and how can that really sort of like enhance that sense of wanting to contribute in some way? How the sense of interbeing with other people and the world through gratitude. What would you say if you want to add anything else to that particular theme of appreciation? What comes to mind, Trudy, when you think about that?
Mind was this clip that somebody sent me from Instagram of an interview with Hugh Grant. And I think it's Drew Barrymore asks him, does he make a gratitude list? And
Hmm.
he's just like, oh no, I make a list of things I hate. And I, I thought, now there's a recipe for unhappiness.
It must be really hard to live a life like that, isn't it?
I hope he was joking, but it was a funny clip. But, this is where I feel mainstream psychology has really benefited from Buddhist psychology because in the early, let's see, this was probably toward the end of the last century, there's a movement um, pioneered by Martin Seligman called positive psychology.
Mhm.
Instead of psychology that was focused on all our problems and psychopathology and how do we fix them, it's sort of like looking maybe more at preventive psychology. How do we prevent these problems from arising in the first place? And he borrowed very heavily from Buddhist psychology and from the practices of love, of loving kindness, of compassion, of gratitude. And I think the biggest sort of gratitude teacher has been David Steindl-Rast, again in the last century. But there's been a lot of study of the ways in which gratitude actually can change the brain and bring more appreciation to life. And again, it comes back to, we have this superpower as human beings of our attention and the fact that we can direct it wherever we want. I can direct it toward you. I could direct it out the window. I could direct it to my juice. I could direct it wherever I want. And to where we direct our attention to a large extent will determine the quality of happiness or unhappiness in our lives. It just does.
Yes.
Again, directing attention to the things we feel grateful for that are gifts in our life, right? That's going to make us happier than directing our attention, I think, to the things that we hate and resent in our lives.
Totally. Yeah, Trudy, this is reminding me of like a talk by Rick Hansen where he likes to say that we have like a set happiness point, and that practicing gratitude is something that helps us stretch and elevate that set happiness point. So it basically really changes the brain. It's fascinating.
Yes. Yes. I mean, just for a personal example, I recently got very ill on a retreat, personal retreat, not a teaching retreat that was supposed to come later, but it never did because I got sick. And um, it took a lot of time for me I was very ill. The doctors where I was saved my life. And it was a very painful process to get that sick and then get better and be in the hospital for 9 days and then all of that. And I mention this because I can look back on it and say, wow, that really ruined our plans. I wasn't able to teach. I went through an ordeal that was so painful. And what for? And my brain could start ruminating that way. Or I have a choice, Sylvie. I could say, the wonderful medical care I received saved my life. I met such beautiful, loving people um, in the hospital. I mean, of course, not everybody was like that, but I met people who were, and my life is enriched by those meetings. Do you see what I mean? Like I can choose how I'm going to look at that experience. And it's not a matter of being in denial and pasting a smiley face on things that were awful. I remember the awful things, but what I'm choosing to focus on are the things that I can be grateful for. And believe me, it makes me feel much better.
And it's, yeah, what a poignant story. And it also brings to mind the sense that it's like life is so fragile, and just being grateful for simply being alive, because it's almost like we're living a miracle, right?
Yes, I love the Tibetan Buddhists talk about this precious human birth. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Birth, of course, is precious, but we are humans, so we're appreciating that fact that as human beings we have consciousness and awareness, and there may be some other creatures that we don't understand who have the same. I think all beings do have consciousness, but we are the ones that, at least as far as we know, seem uniquely able to reflect back on our experience, to self-soothe when we need that.
There are some beautiful studies that have been done with whales and dolphins, and apparently it seems like we're getting some good company in terms of self-reflection and more evidence of like consciousness that is so inspiring. It's amazing. Like we were saying before, right? Science is kind of like revealing new layers of understanding that perhaps we knew intuitively, but it's kind of like coming to the surface nowadays. So, Trudy, can we talk about a little bit about like the really challenging times that we're living in through we talked about social inequality and also climate change. It's like such huge crises that we're living through, and also the wars that we're experiencing. How would you say, and how would you sort of like inspire our viewers to see their mindfulness, our mindfulness practice as a possibility of like igniting or tingling, so to speak, our collective desire to have action, like collective action. How can we sort of have mindfulness help us in being present to these difficulties and motivate us to do something, anything?
Oh, listen, if everybody did one good thing in this world, the world would be transformed. And I think that's important to remember, that any small thing, it doesn't have to be some huge, let's stop the war in the Middle East, let's stop the war in Sudan, but any small thing that each one of us does to contribute goodness to the world matters. And I think in terms of inspiring ourselves, to me, it comes back somewhat to what I was talking about before, about learning how to appreciate and treasure the gifts of this precious human birth, um, to feel worthy of having something to contribute and something to do, having the confidence that what we do does matter, even on a small scale, that it really does matter. So that, I feel, is super important. And the other thing is that, we need permission to be able to carry on with our lives with some measure of joy, even though other people are suffering and dying and, being tortured and all kinds of awful things. It does not help the world for you and me to feel terrible and guilty. And in fact, it's paralyzing to feel that way. Then you sort of feel despair, and what does it matter? And what can I do possibly? And I love these last lines from Wendell Berry, a poem that he wrote in 1973 called The Mad Farmer Liberation Front. He said, "Expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, even though you have considered all the facts." And
Mm.
Buddha said something like that too,
Yeah.
said,
Mm-hmm.
go in peace, even among the troubled, go in joy, even among the, even though we're aware of all the facts, and, and we can still be joyful. And I feel like joy, it fortifies the soul, to use Mary Oliver's language. But joy also, it's energizing. Joy is one of the factors of enlightenment. It's energizing. Um, I'm gonna, I turn to the poets. I'm gonna read you something from Pablo Neruda,
Mm-hmm.
part of a poem. He said, "Who would have said that the earth with its ancient skin would change so much? It has more volcanoes than yesterday. The sky has brand new clouds. The rivers are flowing differently. So much has come into being." And he goes on to say, he talks about his lover. He says, "When I greet you and kiss your flowering mouth, our kisses are others' kisses. Our mouths are others' mouths," right? He's feeling oneness with anybody who's ever kissed their lover. And then he goes on and he says, "Joy, my love, joy in all things, in what falls and in what flourishes. Joy in today and yesterday, the day before and tomorrow. Joy in bread and stone and fire and rain, in what changes, is born, grows, consumes itself. Joy in the air we have and what we have of earth." So I feel this is what is inspiring.
Mm.
Um, this is what inspires me. This is what makes me want to create context for love and care of each other, of our world. Um, and I think each one of you, can do the same in your own way. It, I want to, if I could sort of give one gift to everybody who might be watching or listening, I would say, I want to give you the gift of trust, of confidence, of faith,
Mm.
that have what it takes to do something that matters in this world.
That's beautiful, Trudy. It's wonderful. You also made me think of a movie that is features Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, and these are two men who've experienced a tremendous amount of suffering, right? And they really talk about the power of laughter and of joy. Would you like to end our conversation, perhaps either guiding or inviting our viewers to do any kind of practice that
Yes,
resonates for you at this moment?
yes. I'd like to invite everybody. We'll just take a few minutes to close our eyes, to take a deep breath, conscious, deep, intentional breath in and release. Just letting go of all the words for a minute or two and tuning into the body that is right here, right now, your body. Just feeling the aliveness of the body, the dance of sensations, the movement of the breath in the body. And you're just relaxing for a moment and letting the breath breathe you. Just letting yourself feel loved by the breath, by this rhythm of breathing in, breathing out, that sustains our life. The breath is our faithful companion until the moment we die, our last out breath. So just taking a moment here to feel the loving quality of this continual activity of the breath. The rise and fall of the chest, expansion and contraction of the belly, of the diaphragm. A tender caress of each breath as it moves through the body. Celebrating our miraculous capacity to pay attention. What Thich Nhat Hanh, that you quoted at the beginning, Sylvie, called the miracle of mindfulness. And the love, compassion, and wisdom that arises from this simple act of being present, breath by breath. And when you're ready, opening your eyes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Sylvie, so much for taking this time for us to be together.
It's my pleasure and honor, Trudy. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks to everybody who's been on this call with us today. Sending you all lots of hugs and wishing you well.
Thank you.